There we go. Right, we're on.
Yay.
Thank you so much for coming back and doing this chat with us again.
Very welcome.
Can you again just introduce yourself for the people that may have not seen last week's video or yeah, skip to the start.
Yeah, so I'm Danie. I'm a registered counsellor and a school chaplain. So I work in those spaces to help young people and then people of any age work through a variety of mental health needs or social needs, and draw upon a range of modalities, so that the treatment, I guess, or the treatment plan is tailored to the individual rather than just being like, this is the one specialty area that I work in. And then, yeah, so I like to be able to provide something that's, yeah, just really authentic and genuine to what your needs are. So that's me.
And we said we last week in our chat we were going through how you have endometriosis. So everything that we spoke about last week was about your experience.
Yeah.
But this week we are going through some things from a counselling perspective because mental health plays such a huge role in any chronic disease. Um,
Mm.
Especially ones that affect your gut, because there's a huge link between that. So I guess for the first question that I want to ask you today, as a counselor, how do you approach the mental and emotional challenges that come with chronic conditions like endometriosis?
Yeah, definitely. So, the first thing I do is make sure it feels like a safe space. There's nothing that you can bring that I'm going to judge you on or that I'm going to be shocked by. And yeah, I really like to reiterate that this is your story, this is your experience. And I think, with social media and Google searching and everything, it's so easy to go down the route of comparison. My pain's not a 10, so is my pain real?
Yeah.
I went from having relatively manageable periods to extremely painful periods. So is it something else? Is it something that I've done to cause this?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of things that people bring into the room. Some of them have been through that extremely long period of getting a diagnosis, and then what do they do with that diagnosis? And then how has that changed their life going forward? All of those things. So I would say I want it to be a safe space. I'm here to listen. I think that's the biggest thing is sometimes you can
Absolutely.
feel like you're not being heard or
Mhm.
not being believed. And so, yeah, just being able to create an environment that people can just come and share what they want as
Yeah.
well. Like I am conscious that sometimes it takes that building of trust before you're able to share the whole story.
Yeah.
And in reality, I don't need to know the whole story, and you should feel safe that you don't have to share the details that you don't want to. And I'm not a doctor as well, so there
Yeah.
are certain things that you can share with me, but I can't really kind of give a comment on. But I think, yeah, safety, hearing you, seeing you,
Yeah.
making you feel um, validated in your experience is really important as a counselor.
It is really important. We've said, I think we even said in the last video, and we've said personally,
Mm.
that just being believed and just, it's actually rare. Um,
Yeah, which is so sad because you go to the doctor for help and to be
yeah,
dismissed or
yeah,
to have your pain told that it's like, oh, that's normal or you're just unlucky. Like, what do you do with that when you leave the doctor's office and you pay that
yeah,
that fee or something and you're just
yeah,
like, what did you actually do for me? But I will say as well, like a lot of people that are getting or seeking medical help for chronic conditions or seeking a diagnosis for like endometriosis, um, to be told that it is a mental condition can also be really
Yeah.
upsetting.
Yeah.
So maybe you delay going to a counselor or a psychologist because you know physically that there's something wrong.
Yeah.
And the mental stuff just comes along for the journey, but sometimes it can be really upsetting to hear, we think it's anxiety or we think it's
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
When really anxiety, depression, all of that is just secondary to chronic pain, for example. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I do want to acknowledge that as well, that maybe the counselor is not your first stop on your
Yeah.
journey or discovery, but counselors can certainly assist with managing your pain and
Yeah.
managing your experience. Yeah.
Yeah. And outside of a counselor, what advice would you say family and friends and healthcare providers, or sorry, what can they do to better
Hmm.
emotionally support somebody who does have endometriosis?
Yeah, so this one is a tricky one, because caring for somebody going through a chronic condition like endometriosis, which fluctuates, it's very unpredictable. There can be frustration.
Mm.
So sometimes your plans get cancelled. Sometimes that person wants to vent and talk about their experience more than just the once,
Yeah.
or day to day that experience might get worse.
Yeah.
And so this may be difficult to hear. This is more for the friends.
Mm.
But if you know that you're a person that can't give a decent amount of your time, and I'm not saying you have to give 100% of your time to your
Um,
friend, but
yeah. And not
if you know
every
that you
time
get,
either.
yeah, if you know that like those conversations kind of irritate you, those kinds of things, there is a safe and genuine way that you can say, like, I support you. I can support you in these ways. So I can cook you some
Hmm.
freezer meals or something. But if you're someone that doesn't cope very well with the conversation or the texting or whatever, it's better to not put yourself out there as someone that someone can go to. Because going through that of like, oh, this is my person that said I can text them anytime that I need to talk. And then for them to be kind of told it's too much. And the reality is that, yeah, it's big.
Yeah.
And I really want to acknowledge that for the friends and the family.
Yeah.
Like it's big to take on
Yeah.
someone else's suffering.
Yeah. And
Um,
their
but
emotional burnout is warranted as well,
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
and
So I think,
communicate.
yeah, and
Yeah.
having boundaries.
Yeah.
So I work Monday to Friday, for example, but on a Saturday, I'm happy to stop by and
Yeah.
bring you a coffee, or
Yeah.
I'm happy to, yeah, things that are really like practical help is
Yeah.
actually like
Yeah.
that is the biggest thing that you can do.
Totally.
But showing up if you said that you're going to show up is
Yeah.
big.
Yeah.
And you can reassess. You can get to a point where you're like, you know what, like, I'm so sorry. Um, I'm I just can't be there as often as I would like. But
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that communication is key.
Hmm.
Um, and then, if you're living with somebody dealing with a chronic condition, it's important to, yeah, create a language around how you're going to deal with that. So maybe the person with the chronic condition expresses, I have nothing to give today, or I've only got a little bit to give today, and just sort of respecting what that means. So that means that, like, the plan that we made for dinner tonight's probably getting cancelled, or if we're at dinner and suddenly something goes wrong, to like go home or whatever. But yeah, like understanding if, housework can't get done.
Yeah.
Um, you know, is there something that the person, like you as the healthy person,
Hmm.
can you do the laundry, or like can you take on those extra tasks that
Yeah.
your other person can't? And so I think, yeah, just having a real flexibility and an openness but also, yeah, you don't have to give 100% of yourself either. And like, I think that's wrong to expect anybody anywhere in any situation to have to give 100% of themselves.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I hope that makes sense. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think sometimes having the language. So
Yeah.
the sentence that I say to my husband is, I don't have much to give.
Yeah.
And so he knows if
Yeah.
there's laundry to be done, it's not getting
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
And yeah, he knows that it could be just for today, or I might need to take a few days. And
Yeah.
so having those little things, that helps a lot. So Lauren and myself have a sentence as well, which is, do you have the capacity
Yeah.
to listen to a vent?
Yeah.
Or where are you at today? Is it okay if I just share something
Yeah.
that's on
Well,
my
we
mind
check
that's
in a
bugging
lot.
me? And
Yeah.
total permission for Lauren or myself to be like, just don't today. Or
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, can we voice note? Or
Yeah.
can we text?
Yeah.
And like, just, yeah, I do hope for people that they have a safe person
Yeah.
or a safe few people that they can kind of do that
Me too.
with, but certainly building a language that everyone understands what that means is
Yeah.
really helpful as well.
Absolutely.
Mm.
The next question I want to ask on, speaking of support, how important is self-compassion for individuals living with chronic illnesses like endometriosis?
Mm. Yeah, so the short answer is that it is extremely important.
Yeah.
To elaborate on that,
Hmm.
uh, yeah, again, like as I was mentioning before, like you can go down that deep dive of comparison and
Yeah. Yeah.
questioning your own experience.
Yeah.
Um, or maybe, yeah, maybe you have a really active job and you're really struggling and those kinds of things. So the first thing would be to stop and slow down and process what's going on. So
Yeah.
sometimes you might just be having a lot of bad cramping or something, but you take some medication and then you kind of feel, oh, I can go on with my day.
Mhm.
Other days you might have the cramping, the brain fog, the back pain, and like all of these things. And then you have to assess like, one, is it worth pushing through? Like, do I actually have to do that? And just really giving yourself permission to slow down if you need to, take a day off if you need to,
Yeah.
and call your doctor if you need to, go to the hospital if you need to. And I know that some of these things are traumatic and a bit scary
Yeah.
because of previous experience, but
Yeah.
fronting up to the hospital with pain, that's a normal thing to do.
Yeah.
And endometriosis pain has been associated with the pain of a heart attack.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just because you don't feel like you're at that heart attack level of pain, but if it's pain that's stopping you from
I'm living.
functioning,
Yeah.
stopping you from standing up,
Yeah.
all of these things, like if you feel that you need the additional support or you need stronger pain medication or whatever, like give yourself permission to be like, hey, this is okay.
Yeah.
Um, so self-compassion can simply look like acknowledging today
Mhm.
I need the day off. Today is just a day where I'm gonna stay in bed, or I
Yeah.
just need like a few hours to myself. Like, obviously, I know there's varying life situations. Parents have
Yeah.
endometriosis, those sorts of things. And so you can't be like mum's day off or whatever.
Aw.
But finding the things that work for you is really important. So part of self-compassion can be setting those boundaries for yourself.
Yeah.
So maybe you don't answer the phone
Yeah.
on those days, or maybe you order Uber Eats or
Yeah.
something. Like,
Yeah.
it's not no one is just asking you to be a superhero, only yourself, I think. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's just about acknowledging what you need.
Mm.
And maybe it's not an all day of suffering, maybe it's a week of suffering, but
Yeah.
it's just giving yourself what you need because
Yeah.
you deserve that.
Yeah.
You're worthy of that. Your
Yeah.
pain is valid. No pain is normal.
Mm.
Pain is, again, I've said this in the last session, but pain is the way of your body alerting you that something's not right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I would say take the time
Hmm.
to give yourself what you need.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, just understand that like your experience is your experience and like your pain's
Yeah.
real and it's valid. And just because somebody says that they've got level 4 endometriosis doesn't mean if you get a diagnosis of like a more minor
Yep.
that your pain is not as valid as that person.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, everybody's pain threshold is different. And,
exactly.
some people with endometriosis are asymptomatic, but they have
Yes.
other symptoms like fatigue or,
Mm. Mhm.
pain is not, yeah, everybody's level of
Yeah.
pain is different,
Yeah.
and people with chronic illnesses do tend to be really hard on themselves. And sometimes caring for yourself comes with an enormous amount of privilege,
Mm.
so it's just important to find the little things that really work. If that's having a really hot shower, then have it. Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
or if you need
definitely.
to lay in the fetal position with your heat pack on, do that. Like, there is there is a limit that everybody reaches, and you're allowed to, as you said, you're allowed to care for yourself.
Mm.
Um,
And caring for yourself is a huge part of managing
yeah,
illness.
it is.
Um, yeah, while of course you have an external team,
Mm,
whether that's medical team, counseling, family, friends, whatever, part of it is finding what works for you, what manages your pain the best,
mm,
and doing that and
yeah,
feeling safe to do that. Yeah.
I agree. Um,
Mm.
the other thing that you and I have spoken about a lot is the misconceptions or stigmas that are around endometriosis. But I would like to talk about the stigmas and misconceptions that you've encountered from a counseling perspective when it comes to things like endometriosis.
Yeah, so I think actually one of the biggest ones is uh, endometriosis is invisible.
Yeah.
It's not something, you could look a bit tired or whatever, but you could look fantastic. You could have your makeup done, your hair done, nice clothes, but that doesn't mean that you're not carrying this diagnosis of endometriosis. So I think sometimes people make these associations, and not just endometriosis as well, other conditions, but they assume you're going to look sick.
Yeah.
You're going to be hunched over in pain all the time. So it's about, yeah, removing this idea that being sick means you look sick.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes people avoid sharing their experience because they're like, well, actually, I'm functioning really well, or I've got a good handle on things. And like, actually, you don't see me when I'm sick because I'm at home with the door closed and I'm lying in the dark, for example. And so there's a big thing of like remembering that it's invisible. Um, I watched a video the other day, and there was this woman who parked in a disabled car park spot, and she had the little,
Yeah.
what are they called?
A little pass that you put.
The pass in her window.
Yeah.
And she went into the chemist, and when she came back, there was a woman that was waiting for her to question her, to be like, why did you park in this spot? And this woman had to advocate for herself, and she's like, all right, well, I have the pass.
Mm,
I have chronic fatigue and I actually can't walk for longer than 10 minutes. So that's why
yeah.
my doctor has signed off on this.
Yeah.
And that's just the thing that's a bit crazy. And this woman was like, oh, I was expecting you to be old and I was expecting all this. But the thing is, old people don't necessarily have chronic illness.
Yeah.
And young people can certainly have chronic illness.
Yeah.
So it's just, yeah, it's really about removing this idea that you have to look sick.
Yeah.
Um, and then that also could come into if you need to leave work early because you're not feeling well. You don't have to be like sobbing on the floor.
Mm-mm.
You can just present your case of like,
That
I
is,
have I have probably 10 minutes left
yeah.
before I need to get home.
Yeah.
So yeah, just feel really safe too. And safe is such a big word because I think
Yeah.
a lot of people with chronic illness don't feel safe. So yeah, that's something you're probably going to hear me say another 100 times, and I
Yeah.
apologize. But
No.
the some of the things that I've come across is like pregnancy is going to fix it. That's probably the biggest one is that they're
Yeah.
like, oh, like um, pregnancy is gonna heal my endometriosis.
Hmm.
Um, or, my cousin's brother's mum got pregnant and she had endo and then like she was all good after that. The reality is that with pregnancy, there's a change in your hormones. And so for some cases, they find post-pregnancy that their symptoms have reduced.
Yeah.
Um, for some people, their pain is increased during
Yeah.
pregnancy. For some people, pregnancy is really hard and they have to take different avenues or they can't get pregnant at
Yeah.
all, which is like a whole other
Yeah.
experience and
Yeah.
difficulty.
Mm.
But it's just being bombarded and overwhelmed with stories. And I think sharing stories is incredibly helpful,
Yeah.
but we have to hold on to this idea or we have to hold on to the fact that everyone's like with endometriosis, like the symptoms, the experience, everything
Yeah.
is like the spectrum is huge
Yeah.
of what people go through. Um, some people have their surgery and then they never have to have another surgery again, and
Yeah.
like amazing.
Yeah.
Some people have multiple surgeries. Some people have surgeries every year. Like
Yeah.
it's too hard to look at just one experience
Mm.
and try and mold your experience into that. Um, I'm trying to think what are some of the misconceptions. I think the biggest one is that like you don't always have to look sick. Um, and then there's that thing of like I feel well sometimes, and then
Yeah.
the next day could crash.
Mm.
Could wake up in the morning, feel fit, feel great, put on my favorite jeans, but then by lunchtime I've got to unbutton because I'm bloating.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, some people try, I think we talked about this last week, is some people try gluten-free and then they have a really good outcome of that. Some people try it and there's no change. And um, so it's really hard. And I think, I'm coming back to this idea
I know
again,
that.
but
Yeah.
just don't compare. Like let's just stop that right
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
because um it's not helpful. It's
Mm.
not, and it doesn't work. It doesn't make you feel better.
At all.
Um,
Mm-mm.
yeah. And trying to think like I guess we touched on it just before, but somebody can have very mild, very small amount of endometriosis in the body and be in excruciating pain.
Yeah.
Somebody can have a lot of endometriosis and their only symptom is infertility or
Yeah.
things like that. And
Yeah.
like they have normal periods.
Yeah.
Um, not really any other symptoms, but
Yeah.
they're riddled with
Yeah.
endometriosis. Um, and so just looking at pain, like there's so much more. That's just a small piece of the puzzle. And so if you have other symptoms that are impacting your life in any way,
Yeah.
they're worth investigating. They're worth getting the second opinion or the third opinion. I think I actually said that in my last interview as well.
Yeah.
And so I think, and also when it comes to a cure,
Yeah.
there is no cure. There's only management.
Mm-hmm.
And so if someone's selling you a cure,
Mm.
get out of there.
Mm.
um, in terms of management, you
Yeah.
will over time through trial and error find what works. I don't know if I went off on a tangent just then, probably.
Mm. Okay. That is endo though. Once you pull at one string, the strings
Oh,
keep coming, and then there's another
oh,
string attached to
absolutely.
another string. Don't worry, I'm here for it.
Hmm.
But the next question I wanted to ask you was around mindfulness and therapeutic practices. So,
Yeah.
What mindfulness activities and other therapeutic practices play in managing chronic pain and emotional health?
Yeah, so mindfulness is a really interesting one. It's difficult to go into. It has a long history. And I think some people would feel reluctant to use it for pain because it is really, dropping into your own body. And sometimes you can feel the pain more when you do that.
Mm-hmm.
But the basic explanation or description of mindfulness is to be able to observe the body and thoughts without judgment. So sometimes what can happen when you've got a lot of pain is you can then start to spiral a little bit and be like something else is wrong. Or a really good example is you've had a really bad flare up in the past
Mm-hmm.
that maybe has sent you into hospital or has been really, really difficult. And then, maybe the next month you begin to feel similar levels of pain or similar symptoms, and it's normal for the brain to automatically be like, oh my gosh, it's happening again. And then the anxiety comes, and then, yeah, all these sorts of things. So what mindfulness can do in those situations is it can just help you to stop. You can do a scan of your body, find where the pain is, what the pain is, but without judgment. So that's the most important part, is that you can, or maybe you can observe that thought of, oh no, it's going to happen again. You can just observe that and be like, okay, like, yep, I'm feeling a bit anxious, or I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, or a bit worried about this. And then, yeah, you can do things in mindfulness where if you locate the pain, so say it's like a pain in the shoulder, then you can do some deep breathing into the shoulder. It sounds a bit
Yeah.
woo-woo.
No, that's fine.
Or you can observe it and be like, okay, there's a little bit of tension there, or there's a little bit of pain, and you can kind of really disarm it and just kind of let your body relax a little bit more.
Mhm.
It's not a guarantee that you're going to be completely pain free, but like we'll use the shoulder as an example again. If you've
Yeah.
got tension there, if your shoulders are up,
Yeah.
whatever that pain is, you can breathe into it, you can let it go. And some of that tension release is going
Yeah.
to, yeah, bring that pain down. So mindfulness practice, there's something called a body scan.
Mhm.
Now you can either start at the top of your head or you can start at your feet. You
Mhm.
want to close your eyes. You want to be in a very comfortable position. You don't have to be lying down to do this,
Mhm.
but you want to start, say we start at the feet. Think about the toes, wiggle the toes, notice if there's any tingling, pain, whatever in that area. And you slowly do that all the way up the body to the top of the head. And that just slows you down. You're not really thinking about anything else. Um, but that deep breathing as well. And when I say deep breathing, I don't mean like that you have to do like this real conscious, like breathe in, breathe out for
Mhm.
seconds. All of that can be beneficial,
Mhm.
but it's important to just let yourself breathe normally. Pay attention to it, but you don't have to do anything extreme. Or
Yeah.
breath work is fantastic as well, but
Yeah.
depending on how you feel about breath work,
Yeah.
because breath work is quite intentional and intense.
Yeah.
So maybe
Proper
that's,
breath work. Proper breath work.
yes, that can be good for a different
Yeah.
thing. But if you're feeling quite anxious, just slowing down to breathe and just acknowledging it. Oh, yeah, I've got a stomach ache. Okay, move on. Oh, yeah, chest feels good. Like, oh, shoulders are a bit tight. Let's drop the shoulder and
Mhm.
just take the time. And I find it's helpful. Just jump on YouTube, get a guided
Yeah.
meditation or something, get a guided breathing. Um, and that just helps so like you don't get distracted by your own thinking of like, oh, where was I up to? And all of that. Other therapeutic techniques. Um, there are lots.
Yeah.
I think solution focused therapy is really good because it's just dealing with whatever's happening in the moment. I think sometimes people get a bit uh resistant to therapy because they're like, oh, I had a good childhood, or I'm not worried about that, or I've overcome those challenges of childhood.
Hmm.
So if you can find somebody that focuses on solution focused,
Yeah.
they're just going to look at what you're bringing to the room
Yeah.
immediately or in the immediate future.
Yeah.
And what that can do, there's a lot of visualization that happens in there as well. Um, and yeah, it's just about visualizing the future that you want
Yeah.
and really kind
Yeah.
of putting that into your mind and what would it look like if I, wasn't stressed about my illness? What does that look like in my day to day? And it can be quite effective. I participate in hypnotherapy, which looks at the subconscious, because sometimes you can be feeling really anxious or stressed, but you're not able to pinpoint what it is that's the root cause of that. So hypnotherapy, it just feels like a guided meditation. You're not going to like cluck like a chicken or anything like that. If you do, it's probably a different type of therapy, or it's not therapy at all. It's just hypnosis.
Just some animal
Um,
therapy, animal
yeah,
noise therapy.
but for me, yeah, hypnotherapy was the thing that really helped to calm my anxiety around different things. And yeah, if I'm honest, I'm not 100% sure still what was causing some panic attacks and things like that. But I'm able to manage them a lot more easily. So that could be something to consider. And then outside of the counseling space, a lot of people have reported acupuncture to be a helpful
Yeah.
um, thing for management of pain or calming the nervous system.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so there's lots of things that are available to you. If you're finding that like yeah the gut is really unhappy and it's pretty obvious the symptoms of an unhappy gut,
Hmm.
um, you could combine your therapy of talk therapy and seeing like a clinical nutritionist, for example. A clinical nutritionist will have an understanding of the brain and gut relationship as well, so different to a dietitian. Not to discredit a dietitian can certainly help as well, but someone who can kind of put those two together, anxiety and gut issues and that kind of thing. That would be my recommendation. Yeah.
For sure. Um, and Danny, I guess the very last thing that I want to ask you about is um, a big thing that we've both spoken about is the lack of understanding or validation. So, from a counseling perspective, what advice do you give for people that are struggling with that lack of understanding or validation?
Do you mean from medical professionals or do you mean from just
Anybody
people?
in general,
Mm,
because it stretches, right? It's,
yeah.
you know, it's one of those
Mm,
things that so many people outside of the medical profession are just like, "Mm, yeah, but I had bad periods, or my mom had
yeah.
bad periods. Like,
Mhm.
fine. You know,
Yeah.
really hard to hear, to feel minimized in that way from
Yeah.
people within your circle, but then also from medical professionals.
Mm. Um, a simple way that I like to think about it is pain is pain,
Yeah,
and it doesn't have to make sense to anybody
no,
else. So if you're coming across somebody who's just not getting it, that doesn't mean your experience is invalid.
yeah,
So again, it comes back to that self-compassion and that kindness towards yourself to be like,
yeah,
I know my body and
yeah,
I know something doesn't feel right. And so if you're seeing a medical professional that's just like, hey, like go on the pill, that'll fix it, or a doctor that's like, I think you have anxiety, or whatever. Anxiety can be a symptom, and definitely worth pursuing, looking into management of that. But just take the time to be like, I know myself. I know that my mental state is suddenly out of whack. But I
yeah,
also know I have really heavy cramping periods, and that's not normal. So with medical professionals, I would say go get that second or that third opinion. And
Don't
with
give up
whoever,
on finding somebody. Don't give up.
yeah.
There are
And it
doctors
doesn't
out
have to
there,
just
but
be a GP, you can
um,
go and see a remedial therapist
yeah,
who work, like Lauren works specifically with endometriosis, and
yeah,
like you don't have to, I think, yeah, you don't have to take a particular route. You can go to an acupuncturist and be like, this is what's going on my body. Um, what do you think? Or like what
yeah,
can you do?
yeah,
Or you can uh go to a dietitian or a nutritionist and just be like, these are the symptoms, what can we do?
yeah.
So feel empowered that you can go out and like find answers, and they don't necessarily have to be like a traditional route. In terms of friends, family, strangers on the street, strangers on the internet, disregard.
Yeah,
Go find your people that you can
yeah,
feel safe to share with.
yeah.
We
Um,
have 20 seconds left, apparently.
yeah, we
So,
do. Thank you so much. You will
pleasure.
be on our socials over Endo Month, so we are so grateful for you doing this with us for our clients and our community.